Miyamoto Musashi's psychological trick to win any argument. There is a war happening right now as you listen to these words. And it's not happening in the streets, nor on social media, nor in work meetings. It's happening inside you. Most people spend their entire lives believing they are fighting against the world, against difficult people, against unjust situations. But Miyamoto Musashi understood something that few have dared to face. The most dangerous enemy has never been outside. It has always been within one's own mind. Every time you react impulsively, every time you raise your voice, every time you try to prove you're right, you've already lost. It doesn't matter if you won the argument. If you lost control, defeat has already happened. Musashi lived in an era where a mistake cost a life. A single second of distraction, a single emotional impulse, was enough to die. That's why he developed a silent, cruel, and absolute rule. Whoever reacts first surrenders power. In the modern world, we don't wield swords, but we face constant battles, family arguments, workplace confrontations, verbal attacks, provocations disguised as opinions, and above all, the incessant noise of our own minds, the anxiety that anticipates problems that don't yet exist, the anger that arises when the ego feels threatened, the fear of losing status, respect, control. All of these are invisible blows, and almost no one knows how to defend themselves against them. The common mistake is believing that dominating the other is the goal. Musashi never thought that way. For him, winning wasn't about humiliating, shouting, or imposing force. Winning was about keeping a clear mind while the other drowned in their own chaos. True power lies not in attacking, but in not being dragged into the opponent's emotional game. Whoever controls their reactions controls the entire field. Observe modern discussions. They rarely revolve around truth. They revolve around ego, pride, and identity. People don't want to understand, they want to win. And in this eagerness, they reveal all their weaknesses. The voice rises, the body tenses, the mind closes. Musashi trained for exactly the opposite. The greater the chaos around him, the more immobile he became inside. This is the first shock of awareness. The battlefield is not external, it is internal. Every uncontrolled emotion is a breach. Every automatic reaction is a silent surrender. And until you master this internal territory, no external victory will be real. The world may be chaotic, unfair, and provocative. But the question that defines everything is simple. Who is in control now, you or your emotions? One of the greatest ironies of modern life is that extremely intelligent people often lose the most important emotional battles. They have solid arguments, knowledge, logic, but they still emerge from discussions frustrated, drained, and regretful of what they said. This happens because intelligence is not emotional mastery, and Musashi knew that, without inner control, all intelligence becomes useless in the heat of confrontation. When an argument begins, something silent happens inside the body. The heart races, muscles tense, breathing becomes short. At that moment, the rational mind begins to lose ground. The ego takes control. It's no longer about understanding the other person, but about protecting one's own image. That's when even the most lucid people say things they shouldn't, make bad decisions, and give their opponent an advantage. The biggest mistake is trying to win by using emotion against emotion, anger against anger, pride against pride. That never works. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Musashi understood that emotion is a terrible advisor in any combat. It narrows perception, distorts reality, and creates an artificial urgency. Everything seems like an attack. Everything seems like a threat. And when everything seems like a threat, any reaction seems justified. The ego is the true hidden enemy in arguments. It craves recognition, superiority, validation. When someone questions its opinion, the ego doesn't listen to arguments. It listens to attacks, and it responds with defense or aggression. That's why so many arguments escalate so quickly. Not because the topic is complex, but because the ego has been wounded. Musashi trained his entire life to reduce the ego to the bare minimum because he knew it was a fatal vulnerability. There is a profound difference between emotional strength and emotional mastery. Emotional strength is intensity. It's speaking loudly, imposing presence, intimidating. Emotional mastery is inner silence. It's clarity. It's perceiving what is happening without being swallowed up by it. The first impresses for a few seconds. The second wins consistently. When you react, you give away information. Your tone, your gaze, your posture reveal exactly where to strike to unbalance you. An attentive opponent learns quickly. Musashi observed this with surgical coldness. He allowed the other to show their emotions while remaining unreadable. He who does not reveal, controls. He who exposes himself emotionally becomes predictable. That's why intelligent people lose emotional arguments. Because they confuse reason with control. Because they believe that being right is enough. It isn't. Without inner control, even the truth becomes weak. Musashi didn't seek to be right. He sought to be whole. And those who are whole don't need to react to win. Most people imagine Miyamoto Musashi as a brutal, aggressive man, dominated by the violence of the battlefield. This image is comfortable, but false. Musashi was not invincible because he attacked better. He was invincible because he thought better. The sword was merely the visible extension of an invisible domain, the completely indomitable mind. Musashi lived surrounded by men as strong as he was, as trained as he was, as willing to kill as he was. If victory depended solely on physical technique, his duels would have been unpredictable, but they weren't. He won repeatedly because he understood that the real fight begins before the first blow. It begins in the mental state. Whoever enters combat emotionally charged is already behind. While his opponents focused on appearing strong, Musashi focused on remaining empty. While they tried to intimidate, provoke, or accelerate the pace of the confrontation, he observed. He knew that the desire to win quickly is a weakness. Haste is born of fear. Exaggerated aggression is born of insecurity. And where there is fear, there are openings. Musashi understood that every confrontation is also a psychological exchange. Every movement carries information. Every gesture reveals intention. An impatient look betrays anxiety. A rigid posture reveals tension. A verbal provocation reveals a need for validation. Musashi didn't react to any of that. He let the other person expose themselves. And the more the opponent tried to dominate him emotionally, the more he revealed his own flaws. Musashi's true power lay in his ability to remain whole. He didn't need to prove anything. He didn't need to impress. He didn't need to win quickly. This lack of necessity made him unpredictable. And unpredictability is one of the most lethal weapons in any confrontation, physical or verbal. In the modern world, this lesson is even more relevant. Those who justify themselves too much seem insecure. Those who react too quickly seem weak. Those who talk too much give too much away. The trained mind, on the other hand, chooses when to act. And that choice changes everything. Musashi knew that it wasn't the force of the blow that decided the fight, but the exact moment it was delivered. By mastering his opponent's mind, Musashi created a psychological imbalance in him. The other expected a reaction, but received silence. He expected anger, but received calm. He expected fear, but received presence. This is deeply destabilizing. An agitated mind cannot withstand confronting a serene mind for long. It collapses on its own. That's why Musashi didn't win with the sword. He won beforehand. When the duel began, the outcome was already decided in his mind. That's the difference between those who fight and those who control the combat. The sword cuts. The mind decides where. Every philosophy of mastery begins with a simple yet extremely rare act: observing oneself. Musashi implicitly called this the mirror principle. Before attempting to control anything external, he turned inward. Because whoever does not see themselves clearly controls nothing. They only react. Most people are at war with their own emotions because they have never stopped to get to know them. They feel something arise and immediately identify with it. They say, "I'm angry, I'm anxious, I can't take it anymore." This language is not innocent. It creates a fusion between identity and emotional state. And when you become the emotion, you lose any ability to control it. Musashi did the opposite. He observed. He felt the anger rising and wondered where it came from. Was it a real threat or wounded pride? He sensed fear and investigated whether it was intuition or imagination. He didn't judge the emotion, he didn't repress it, he didn't dramatize it. He studied it, like a general observing troops before battle. This act of observation creates something precious: space. Between stimulus and reaction, a microscopic pause arises. For the average person, this pause does not exist. They explode, flee, defend themselves, attack. For the conscious warrior, this pause is everything. It is there that choice is born. It is there that power returns to the right hands. When you observe an emotion without identifying with it, something curious happens. It begins to lose strength. Not because it was fought, but because it was seen. Emotions need identification to grow. They need you to say, "This is me." When you only observe and say, "This is happening to me," the emotion finds nowhere to take root. Musashi understood this intuitively. He became the sky observing the storm, not the storm itself. The rain comes, the thunder sounds, but the sky remains. This shift in perspective completely transforms the inner experience. You feel, but you don't drown. You perceive, but you don't react automatically. This is the first real training of the mental warrior. It's not about strength. It's not about rigid discipline. It's about awareness. It's about learning to see yourself without lies, without excuses, and without dramatization. As long as you don't know yourself, your emotions are in control. When you begin to observe yourself, the hierarchy changes. Before you can control an army, you need to know each soldier. Their emotions are your soldiers. Ignoring them breeds chaos. Repressing them breeds rebellion. Observing them breeds leadership. Musashi started there, and that's where any true mastery begins. There's an invisible trap in the way most people talk about emotions. A simple but devastating trap. When someone says, "I'm angry," it sounds like just a description. But in reality, it's a declaration of identity. It's as if the person is saying, "I am this now." And the instant you become the emotion, you lose any control over it. Musashi would never allow this internal error. He understood that language shapes the mind. The way you name an experience defines how you relate to it. Saying, "I am angry," attaches the emotion to yourself. Saying, "Anger is rising within me now," creates distance. It seems like a small difference, almost irrelevant. But this shift is what separates a reactive man from a conscious warrior. When you identify with an emotion, it expands. It demands immediate action. It begs for release, expression, and explosion. The mind loses depth and begins to operate in a primitive mode. But when you observe the emotion as an internal phenomenon, something temporary, it begins to behave differently. It loses urgency. It loses authority. It loses the right to command your actions. Musashi knew that emotions are not orders. They are signals, messengers. And a messenger does not govern the kingdom. He only delivers information. When anger arises, it is pointing to something. A boundary crossed, a frustrated expectation, a wounded ego. If you explode, you lose the message. If you observe, you learn from it. This internal adjustment completely changes external behavior. In an argument, while the other person merges with their own anger, you remain separate from it. While the other person says, "I am this," you think, "This is happening." This psychological asymmetry creates an immediate advantage. One is inside the storm, the other is watching it. The common mind fears this detachment because it believes that, without emotion, it will lose strength. But the opposite occurs. By not merging with anger, you gain precision. You gain choice. You gain time. You decide if you will act, when you will act, and how you will act. Emotion ceases to be a trigger and becomes a resource. Musashi trained this separation until it became automatic. In extreme situations, when death was imminent, he wouldn't internally say, "I'm afraid." He recognized fear as a bodily and mental phenomenon, not as an identity. This allowed him to feel everything without being overwhelmed by anything. This is the basis of true self-control. Not denying emotions, not repressing them, not dramatizing them, simply not becoming confused by them. When you understand that it is not the anger, nor the fear, nor the anxiety, but the person who perceives them, something fundamental changes. The mind ceases to be a chaotic battlefield and begins to become a governable territory. Among all the concepts developed by Miyamoto Musashi, few are as profound as Mizu no Kokoro, the mind like water. This image is not poetic by chance. It describes with surgical precision the ideal mental state of a warrior, a state that does not depend on strength or rigidity, but on absolute clarity. Imagine a perfectly calm lake. Its surface reflects everything exactly as it is. The sky, the trees, the movement around it. There is no distortion. There is no interference. This is the mind Musashi sought. A mind that adds no emotion to reality, that does not interpret, does not judge, does not project. It simply sees. Now imagine throwing a stone into this lake. The ripples spread and the reflection is lost. Nothing has changed in the external world, but perception has been completely altered. These ripples are emotions: anger, fear, euphoria, pride. Each one distorts how you see the situation, and when perception is distorted, any decision made based on it will be flawed. Musashi didn't believe it was possible to stop the stones from falling. Emotions arise. They are inevitable. The mistake lies in allowing the waves to stretch, in feeding the turbulence with thoughts, internal stories, and automatic reactions. Training is not about avoiding the stone, but about making the water return to calm quickly. A mind like water is not passive. It is extremely alert. It responds with precision. If you try to cut water with a sword, it opens without resistance and quickly recovers. It doesn't fight the attack, but it is also not harmed by it. This is the mind that adapts without losing integrity. In the modern context, this means not becoming emotionally attached to provocations, criticism, or praise. An aggressive comment only generates waves if you allow it. An offense only hurts if it encounters rigidity. Water doesn't get offended, it flows. And that's precisely why it prevails. A rigid mind breaks. A restless mind errs. A mind like water observes, adjusts, and acts at the right moment. Musashi trained to constantly return to this state, not as a distant ideal, but as a daily practice. Whenever he perceived inner turmoil, he returned to his center. This concept completely changes how you deal with conflict. Instead of reacting to the impact, you absorb, evaluate, and respond. Instead of being emotionally pushed, you remain stable. Water doesn't need to prove its strength. It demonstrates it through its permanence. Having a mind like water means perceiving reality without emotional distortion. It means acting without haste. It means responding without getting lost. This state allows one to win arguments without raising their voice, resolve conflicts without fighting, and face challenges without falling apart internally. There is a silent error that sabotages any attempt at emotional mastery, treating emotions as enemies. Most people believe they need to eliminate anger, fear, anxiety, or frustration to achieve balance. Musashi saw this as naivete. Emotions are not system failures. They are natural movements of the mind. The problem has never been the existence of these waves, but the inability to manage them. When someone tries to suppress an emotion, it doesn't disappear. It accumulates. It compresses. It returns later with more force and less control. Musashi understood that resisting emotions is like trying to hold water with your hands. The more force you use, the more it escapes. True mastery begins when you stop fighting the flow. An emotion arises like a wave. It grows, reaches a peak, and, if not fed, naturally dissipates. What prevents this natural cycle are the thoughts that attach themselves to the emotion. Internal stories, justifications, imaginary dialogues. The mind begins to repeat the stimulus and, with that, keeps the wave active. It's not the emotion that holds you back. It's the narrative you create around it. Musashi trained to feel without prolonging. He allowed the emotion to arise in his body, acknowledged its presence, and added no mental fuel. No judgment, no dramatization, no resistance, just presence. This simple gesture drastically shortens the duration of internal turmoil. In the modern world, this requires psychological maturity. The mind has been conditioned to react, to respond immediately, to express itself at any cost. But expression without awareness is merely discharge, and discharge is not mastery. The warrior does not discharge. He regulates. By understanding that emotions are waves, you change your internal posture. Instead of asking, "How do I make this stop?" you start asking, "How do I get through this without losing myself?" This change is crucial. The wave ceases to be a threat and becomes a transient phenomenon. Musashi wasn't seeking emotional anesthesia. He was seeking stability. A stable mind feels everything but doesn't drown in anything. It knows that no emotion is permanent. None defines who you are. They all pass, as long as you don't try to hold on to them or expel them. When you let go of the war against your emotions, something powerful happens. The energy previously used for resistance transforms into presence. You gain clarity, you gain time, you gain choice. And this sets the stage for the next level, acting strategically even when the storm is inevitable. Because life doesn't respect ideal states. It provokes, it pressures, it attacks. Musashi knew this. That's why he didn't stop at philosophy. He developed practical techniques for when the mind is already under attack. Techniques for the mental battlefield. Having a mind as clear as water is the ideal. But Musashi was not a naive idealist. He lived in a world where chaos was constant, where there was no time for lengthy theories, where the storm arrived without warning. Therefore, in addition to philosophy, he developed practical techniques for acting when the mind is already under pressure. The first truth is harsh but liberating. There will be times when you are emotionally wounded, no matter how much you train. The difference between the ordinary man and the warrior is not avoiding the impact, but knowing what to do immediately after it. Musashi trained responses, not reactions. When the mind is attacked, the body goes into a state of alert. The nervous system takes over. At that moment, trying to think positive or rationalize is useless. The technique needs to act on the body first. Musashi understood this intuitively. He knew that the body is the gateway to the mind. Breathing was his first weapon. Breathing slowly, deeply, and deliberately sends a direct signal to the nervous system that there is no immediate threat. This reduces the adrenaline rush and restores cognitive clarity. It's not mysticism, it's a biological strategy. Whoever controls their breathing controls their internal rhythm of combat. Another essential technique was conscious immobility. Musashi avoided unnecessary movements when the pressure increased. In the modern world, this translates to not responding immediately, not speaking in the heat of the moment, not making decisions at the peak of tension. Strategic silence is an advanced form of action, not passivity. He also practiced detachment from the immediate outcome. The mind under attack wants to solve everything now. It wants to win, justify, correct. Musashi ignored this urgency. He focused on the next correct move, not the final result. This stabilizes the mind and avoids irreversible mistakes. These techniques work because they interrupt the automatic reaction cycle. They create space. And space, again, is power. The average person tries to unload emotion. The warrior contains it, reorganizes it, and redirects it. When you learn to operate even under emotional pressure, something profoundly changes. External chaos loses its authority. The storm may rage, but you don't fall apart. You don't need to be calm to be in control. You just need to be present and trained. These techniques don't eliminate emotions. They prevent emotions from taking control, and this prepares the ground for the next stage of Musashi's philosophy, not only defending oneself against emotions, but using them as a source of power. Fear is the oldest and most powerful general in the human emotional army. It doesn't shout, it doesn't explode, it doesn't reveal itself easily. It whispers, and precisely for that reason, it dominates. Musashi lived with fear in a way that few modern people can imagine. Before each duel, the possibility of death was real, concrete, inevitable. Yet, he did not allow fear to take command. He treated it as a sign, not as a sentence. Musashi understood something essential. Fear never lives in the present. It always dwells in the future. It is born from anticipation, projection, mental images of what could go wrong. The body is here, but the mind races ahead, creating catastrophic scenarios. When this happens, vital energy dissipates, perception narrows, and action becomes uncoordinated. Fear doesn't paralyze because it's strong. It paralyzes because it fragments the mind. Musashi's main weapon against fear was surprisingly simple: conscious breathing. He knew he couldn't argue with fear using thoughts because fear doesn't listen to arguments. It responds to physiological states. By slowing his breathing, by deepening each inhalation and each exhalation, Musashi anchored his mind to his body, and the body only exists now. This return to the present dismantles fear at its root. When you breathe mindfully, there's no room left for imaginary scenarios. The nervous system receives the message that there is no immediate threat. The mind begins to clear. Fear doesn't disappear, but it loses control. It ceases to be a commander and becomes merely a messenger again. In the modern world, fear takes on different forms. Fear of making mistakes, of speaking, of failing, of being rejected, of losing status. But the mechanism is the same. The mind flees from the present and clings to what if. Musashi trained to cut off this movement before it gained strength. He didn't ask, "What if I lose?" He asked, "What is there to be done now?" This shift in focus is crucial. Fear demands your full attention to grow. When you ignore it or try to fight it, it strengthens. When you anchor it in the present, it naturally dissolves. Breathing is not a relaxation technique. It's a strategic anchor. It brings you back to the only territory where effective action is possible. Musashi didn't eliminate fear. He kept it under surveillance. He used its energy to sharpen his senses, increase his focus, and refine his presence. Fear, when not dominated, can become a silent ally. But this only happens when you refuse to follow it into the imaginary future it insists on showing you. If fear dwells in the negative future, euphoria dwells in the positive future. Both are equally dangerous. Musashi knew that attachment to the outcome is a subtle but lethal trap. Both the excitement of imminent victory and the despair of possible defeat distract the mind from the present, and everything that distracts the mind from the present weakens action. Before a duel, many warriors lost themselves in fantasies. Some imagined the glory of victory, others anticipated the humiliation of defeat. In both cases, the mind failed to observe what truly mattered, the present moment. Musashi avoided this mistake with relentless discipline. He didn't fight for victory, he fought for the next correct move. This is one of the hardest ideas for the modern mind to accept. We live obsessed with results, metrics, approval, recognition, success. The problem is that the result is never entirely under our control. When you cling to it, you surrender your emotional stability to something external, and that creates anxiety, haste, and rigidity. Musashi practiced detachment not as indifference, but as absolute focus on the process. Each step, each adjustment, each gesture was executed with total attention. Victory was a consequence, not a direct objective. This focus on the process creates a stable mind in both success and failure. Euphoria does not intoxicate. Despair does not paralyze. When you focus on the outcome, any obstacle seems like a disaster. When you focus on the process, obstacles become information. Mistakes cease to be threats and become opportunities for adjustment. Musashi saw each situation as part of the flow, not as a final verdict on its value. This detachment creates a huge psychological advantage. While the other person oscillates between hope and fear, you remain constant. While the other person despairs over small losses or becomes careless with small gains, you continue to execute with precision. The detached mind neither accelerates nor stalls. It flows. In today's world, this translates to working without excessive anxiety about the final result, speaking without needing to convince, acting without needing to prove. When the focus is on what you control, the mind is strengthened. When the focus is on what you don't control, the mind becomes fragmented. Musashi knew that true mental freedom is born when you let go of the outcome and take full responsibility for the present action. This is the rare balance between intensity and serenity. You surrender completely to the moment, without carrying the weight of the outcome. And it is precisely in this state that action becomes most effective. Anger is the most misunderstood emotion of all. For most people, it is seen as something dirty, dangerous, something that should be repressed or discharged. Musashi saw anger completely differently. For him, anger was not a flaw. It was raw energy. And like all energy, the problem was never its existence, but the way it was used. When anger arises, the body is flooded with force. The blood heats up, the muscles contract, attention narrows. This response is not a mistake of nature. It is an ancient survival mechanism. The mistake happens when this energy takes control of the mind. When this occurs, anger ceases to be fuel and becomes a wildfire. It consumes everything, including the one who feels it. Musashi never allowed anger to explode chaotically. He didn't shout. He didn't lose his composure. He didn't let himself be blinded by rage. He did something far more dangerous. He remained cold while the energy of anger flowed within him. This combination is devastating. Uncontrolled energy destroys. Control without energy paralyzes. Musashi combined the two. He understood that anger contains an extraordinary power of focus. When channeled, it sharpens attention, eliminates distractions, and strengthens resolve. Instead of venting anger in useless words or gestures, he directed it toward precise execution. Each movement became more intense, more conscious, more decisive. In the modern world, anger is often wasted. People explode in arguments, write impulsive messages, make decisions they later regret. All of this is wasted energy. The mental warrior does the opposite. When anger arises, he doesn't express it immediately. He contains it, observes it, and redirects it. This containment is not repression. Repression pushes anger into the unconscious. Channeling it keeps it conscious and functional. You recognize the emotion, feel its strength, and decide where it will be applied. Instead of attacking people, you attack problems. Instead of arguing, you act. Instead of complaining, you build. Musashi used anger as an internal amplifier. It increased his presence, his precision, and his courage. But because he didn't identify with it, the anger didn't distort his perception. It merely provided power. This is a rare and extremely valuable skill. When you learn to transform anger into focused action, your life changes. Situations that once generated explosions begin to generate productivity. Conflicts that once drained you begin to strengthen you. Anger ceases to be an internal enemy and becomes a silent ally. The real mistake isn't feeling anger. It's wasting it. Musashi never wasted energy. He refined it. And this ability to convert emotional intensity into precise action is one of the clearest marks of a mature mental warrior. Most people have been taught to classify emotions as good or bad. Calmness is good. Anger is bad. Fear is weakness. Joy is virtue. Musashi completely rejected this moralistic view. For him, emotions had no moral character. They were forces, pure energy. And all energy is neutral until it is directed. This mislabeling creates guilt, resistance, and inner confusion. When someone feels anger, they believe they are wrong. When they feel fear, they believe they have failed. When they feel frustration, they believe they have lost control. This judgment solves nothing. It only adds more noise to the mind. Musashi sought inner silence, not condemnation. Emotional alchemy begins when you abandon the idea that emotions define who you are. They don't define you, they permeate you. Fear brings alert energy. Anger brings action energy. Frustration brings adjustment energy. Euphoria brings expansion energy. The problem arises when you reject this energy or drown in it. The alchemist doesn't throw away lead. He transforms it. Musashi did the same with emotions. When he felt nervous before a duel, he didn't try to calm himself down by force. He accepted the energy and converted it into extreme focus. Every sound, every movement, every detail became clearer. The emotion elevated his performance. In modern daily life, the principle is the same. Nervousness before a presentation is not a sign of inadequacy. It's available energy. If you try to suppress it, it becomes anxiety. If you channel it, it becomes presence. Frustration in the face of an obstacle is not failure. It's fuel for intelligent persistence. This shift in perspective requires maturity. It's easier to label emotions as enemies than to learn how to use them. But whoever masters this alchemy becomes dangerous in the best sense of the word. They don't depend on external circumstances to feel strong. They use what arises from within as raw material. When you begin to see emotions as energy, your relationship with life changes. Challenging situations cease to be threats and become opportunities for channeling. You stop running away from discomfort and start using it. This creates a deep, silent, unwavering confidence. Musashi wasn't seeking a life without emotions. He was seeking mastery over them. Emotional alchemy is precisely that, transforming everything that arises into conscious impulse. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is denied. Everything is integrated. This is the point where the warrior stops reacting to the world and begins to shape it from within. Emotions cease to be obstacles in the way and become the very fuel of the journey. There is a silent, yet absolute difference between the common man and the true master. The common man reacts. The master transforms. This distinction defines who is dragged along by life and who navigates it with direction. Musashi understood that reacting is always operating in the territory of the other. Transforming is operating at one's own center. When someone reacts emotionally, their action stems from an external stimulus. A word generates anger. An obstacle generates frustration. A threat generates fear. The world dictates the internal rhythm. The average warrior lives like this, oscillating according to circumstances, but the master does not allow this reversal of control. He feels everything, but decides what to do with what he feels. To convert means to transform stimulus into intention. Instead of responding automatically, the master gathers the energy of the emotion and redirects it. There is no waste. There is no explosion. There is refinement. Musashi did this so naturally that his opponents mistook his calmness for weakness. It was a fatal mistake. Emotional shifting creates a profound asymmetry in any confrontation. While one exposes themselves emotionally, the other strengthens themselves internally. While one talks too much, the other observes. While one tries to win through pressure, the other wins through precision. The master doesn't need to prove strength. He manages it. In everyday life, this difference appears in small choices. When someone provokes you and you react, you relinquish power. When you observe, breathe, and respond with intention, you regain control. Most people believe that controlling emotions means suppressing them. The master knows that controlling is directing. Transforming emotions requires presence. You need to be aware of what arises within in order to work with it. Those who don't observe themselves don't transform anything. They only discharge. That's why internal training is indispensable. Without it, every emotion becomes an impulse. With it, every emotion becomes a resource. Musashi developed this skill to the point where any adverse situation became raw material. A delay turned into patience. A mistake turned into adjustment. A provocation turned into strategic silence. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was ignored. Everything was integrated. This attitude creates something rare: inner sovereignty. You don't depend on the validation of others. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to convince anyone. Your stability doesn't waver with praise or criticism. This disarms any attempt at external control. The master doesn't harden. He deepens. The more pressure, the more focused he becomes. The more chaos, the clearer his action. This is conversion at its highest level, transforming one's own life into a constant training ground. While the average warrior asks, "Why is this happening to me?" the master asks, "How do I use this?" This question changes everything. It shifts you from the position of victim to the position of creator. And it is at this point that the path rises beyond technique and enters the realm of supreme mastery. At the apex of Miyamoto Musashi's philosophy lies a concept that few understand and almost no one achieves. He called it ku, the path of emptiness. To the common mind, the word emptiness sounds like absence, like nothingness, like apathy. But Musashi spoke of the opposite. Emptiness is the state of maximum potential. It is the mind free from noise, free from attachment, free even from the need to win. Imagine the sky. It contains clouds, storms, sun, and wind. But it is none of those things. It allows everything to pass by unaffected. Emptiness is this inner sky, a state in which thoughts arise and disappear without leaving a trace. Emotions pass through without settling. The mind sees reality without filters. In a state of emptiness, there is no prior strategy. There is no overcalculation. There is no hesitation. Action arises directly from perception. The body responds before the mind needs to formulate a plan. This is the state that makes the master unpredictable and impossible to manipulate. Musashi knew that the more the mind is filled with intentions, desires, and expectations, the slower and more distorted it becomes. Emptiness is not a lack of preparation. It is the result of so much preparation that effort disappears. It is discipline so profound that technique dissolves into action. When someone tries to provoke a master in this state, they encounter no resistance. They encounter no reaction. They encounter no ego. And without ego, there is nowhere for the attack to take hold. The provocation passes like the wind. The threat loses its power. The external chaos finds no internal echo. Reaching emptiness is not a mystical event. It is a consequence. It arises when self-observation clears the ground, when the mind, like water, settles, when emotions are converted into conscious energy. Emptiness is the fertile ground where everything can be born, but nothing clings. In the modern world, emptiness manifests as extreme clarity amidst pressure. It is the ability to act without anxiety, to speak without needing to convince, to decide without fear of judgment. It is being completely present without being emotionally trapped. This state does not eliminate humanity. It refines it. You continue to feel, but you don't get lost. You continue to act, but you don't fragment. You continue to live, but you are not dragged down. That is Musashi's true invincibility. Emptiness is the point at which the warrior no longer needs to fight with himself. The mind becomes an open, silent, and powerful space. And from this space, any action is precise, necessary, and inevitable. There is such a high level of psychological dominance that provocations simply cease to work. Not because the warrior has become insensitive, but because there is nothing left within him that can be pulled. Musashi achieved this state, and that is precisely why his presence destabilized even before any physical movement. Provocation always depends on an emotional hook. Pride, vanity, fear, need for approval. When someone provokes, they expect a reaction. They hope to touch a sensitive point. But the warrior who masters himself doesn't offer that point. He feels it, but doesn't identify with it. He perceives it, but doesn't react. And this absence of response is deeply disturbing for the one who tries to control. In the modern world, provocation is constant. Disguised criticism, irony, subtle disrespect, direct attacks. Most people react automatically, as if they needed to defend their honor, their image, their worth. Musashi understood that those who need to defend themselves are already in an inferior position. True power doesn't need external validation. When you don't react, the other person loses control of the dynamic. The attempted attack backfires on the attacker. The provocateur exposes themselves. They talk more. They insist. They lose their balance. Meanwhile, you remain whole. This asymmetry creates silent authority. Not the authority of fear, but of presence. Being impossible to provoke doesn't mean being passive. It means choosing when and how to act. It means not surrendering your energy to just any stimulus. The warrior doesn't respond to everything. He selects. He understands that attention is power, and he doesn't distribute it indiscriminately. Musashi trained so that his mind would offer no emotional resistance. Where there is no resistance, there is no friction. Where there is no friction, there is no external control. That is the essence of psychological invulnerability. It is not rigidity, it is fluidity. When you reach this state, arguments lose importance. Verbal attacks lose their power. Other people's opinions cease to define your inner self. You become stable. And stability is intimidating for those who live in emotional chaos. The warrior who cannot be provoked doesn't win by shouting. He wins by remaining. He doesn't need to impose himself. He occupies space naturally. And that completely changes how the world reacts to you. Musashi's philosophy doesn't belong to the past. It has simply changed battlefields. Today, the duel doesn't take place in open fields with swords, but in meeting rooms, relationships, social networks, and above all, within one's own mind. The modern warrior faces constant, invisible, and accumulating pressures. The mistake is believing that these battles are minor. They are not. They simply don't leave visible scars. Stress, anxiety, resentment, and impulsiveness corrode from within. Musashi would have recognized this scenario immediately, and he would have applied the same principles with precision. The modern warrior needs to learn to fight without raising his voice, to win without humiliating, to take his stand without losing his center. This requires exactly what Musashi trained for: inner clarity, emotional control, and conscious action. At work, this means not reacting to provocations, not rushing to justify oneself, and not making decisions under emotional pressure. In relationships, it means listening without merging with the other person's emotions, setting boundaries without aggression, and maintaining presence even in difficult conversations. A trained mind becomes a competitive advantage. While others become emotionally exhausted, you remain functional. While others get lost in conflict, you see solutions. This is not coldness, it's maturity. Musashi wasn't seeking comfort, he was seeking effectiveness. And effectiveness begins within. The modern warrior who applies these principles doesn't become distant. He becomes solid. And solid people aren't easily pushed. Bringing Musashi into the present means understanding that the true battle remains internal. The sword has changed form, but the enemy remains the same: the undisciplined mind. No state of mastery is maintained without practice. Musashi didn't rely on talent, inspiration, or motivation. He relied on training. The modern mental warrior needs the same discipline, applied to small daily choices. Training begins with observation. Several times a day, you stop and notice what's happening inside, without judgment, without immediate correction, just awareness. That's the foundation of everything. Next comes breathing, not as an occasional technique, but as a habit. Breathing deeply when pressure arises reprograms the nervous system. This is not relaxation, it's an internal command. Then comes the conversion. Every emotion is used, nothing is discarded. Anger becomes focus, fear becomes attention, frustration becomes adjustment. This is the training that transforms difficulties into fuel. Daily discipline builds something rare: quiet confidence. Not the confidence based on external results, but the confidence of someone who knows they don't easily lose control.